TCI is brought to you by Spendthrift Stallion Cross Traffic, a Grade 1 winner and Unbridled Song's fastest racehorse ever with 116 Beyer speed. First foals are arriving now.
Welcome back to TCI, your inside track to the Triple Crown. Alongside Joel Cunningham, I'm John Siegel. Well, Joel, your number one was in action on Saturday in the Fountain of Youth, and man, I can see why you have him atop the list. He remains undefeated in there. Tell me, what did you think of his performance in that race?
I thought it was another step forward for Mohaymen, a horse that got a late start at 2, wasn't a Breeders' Cup horse. That could actually be an advantage for him. Sometimes to not have to feel pressure to get ready to run, a big race in the first, week in November in the Breeders' Cup. In this case, it was October. But for him to sort of take a slower path, not be geared up so early, be able to win the Nashua, be able to win the Remsen, where I thought he faced some pretty good horses. But he just continues to get better, John, from his maiden race. Now fast forward to the Fountain of Youth victory, even looking at his Holy Bull, the odd pace scenario he faced in there, still showed his class, won very easily. He's faced better horses since the Nashua to the Fountain of Youth. Every race he's faced a better group, in my opinion, and he's taken the step forward. He's answered the call. I look at this performance in the Fountain of Youth. He broke outside and I actually thought that was going to be an advantage for him. Going in the first turn, he'd be able to pick his spot based on how the pace unfolded, inside of him, and I thought there'd be a pretty good pace. Well, in this case, nobody really wanted to run out to the lead, and you had a long shot in there, Golden Ray, that bounced around some horses going in the first turn, and it forced Mohaymen to have to go a little wide, lose ground while some other horses got forward position on him. The pace wasn't all that strong. He was able to make a middle move wide down the backstretch to get in contention. However, a talented horse like Zulu had a much better trip than him, in my opinion. Even though Zulu was giving away experience, when they turned for home and you saw Zulu where he was, you saw Mohaymen where he was, it was a fair race at that point because in my eyes, Zulu didn't was giving away the experience, but he had a much better trip. Mohaymen had to make a middle move to get into contention. So to me, I expected a big race in the stretch from both colts, and to me, the fact that Zulu had no answer from Mohaymen, he was able to easily pull away and then ease up at the wire, save something for the Florida Derby. That was very impressive. And now what I'm interested in seeing is, will Mohaymen come back in the Florida Derby? He probably will, like Sold At, like the stablemate. You look at Kieran McLaughlin, but I would not be shocked if they said, look, we don't want to face NYRA. We want maybe an easier path. Let's see what Shagaf does in the Gotham Stakes and then make a decision. Do we want to take Mohaymen up to the Wood Memorial? Wouldn't shock me. I do think he's most likely going to run in the Florida Derby. But if they decide to go to the Wood Memorial and maybe avoid a tough race with NYRA before the Derby, that is not unfathomable, in my opinion.
You also had the other horse, you mentioned him a couple of times, that's Zulu in there. He ran pretty impressive in that race, but it was no doubt that he was going to be second in there. Mohaymen was much the best. But did he do enough on the TCI top 10 to move up to number 2 and knock off Songbird, since they're still saying she's not going to run in the Derby?
We've been doing this for 7 years now. When we make the list, it's hard for horses to move up and down. I mean, I'm not going to change any of our top 10, John. Zulu ran like I hoped he would run. He was giving away so much experience in there. I think if you're a Zulu fan, you want him to run a little bit better. You expected to get a better trip than, and once you got the better trip than Mohaymen, you expected maybe for him to show more in the stretch to be able to run with that colt. Mohaymen clearly showed he's number 1 where we have him. Songbird goes without saying. She won't be on the list, beyond March 21st or whenever the Triple Crown deadline is to nominate, because she's either going to nominate or she's not, and then she'll fall off the list. So I think Zulu, yes. I think, essentially they're 1-2 with the colts I've seen right now. I'm not willing to move him up or down. I'm very content with our top 10 right now.
Well, it's worth mentioning there, More Spirit. I just wanted to say, for the fans out there watching, More Spirit came back and had a much better breeze. Bob's the master at this stuff. He put him in company, and it looks like the horse is back on track, so that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely, and be interested to see what path they take, if they'll stay at Santa Anita or they'll go for the Arkansas Derby eventually. Obviously, he'll have one prep before then, and it's looking like the San Felipe.
All right, well, I see there number 6, we got Shagaf. We're going to see him in action this weekend in the Gotham. Tell me, what do you think about his competition in there, and do you feel like he'll have an easy victory?
Well, I was hoping to see a stablemate, My Man Sam, in there, and we don't see him coming back in the Gotham like they said that they were pointing. The horse is working. Be interested to see where he ends up, because quite honestly, he now leaves that position open, number 10, for other horses to enter. I made this top 10, John. Really, I was impressed mostly with the top 6 horses, and even NYRA's the champion at 7. But you know, you look at our number 9 horse, Motom, number 10 horse, My Man Sam, there's very little that separates those horses from another 6 to 8 horses that didn't make our top 10, John. So, you know, to me, I think the end of our list is very wide open. We'll see where My Man Sam ends up, but I look at the Gotham Stakes. Certainly Shagaf, drawing along the inside in here. I think they're going to let him fall out and run his race. I don't think that they're going to really try to have any tactical plans here. When I look at the pace scenario, I don't see much of a pace. And when I look back at the Withers, there wasn't a pace in that race either, and it compromised some horses in there, in my opinion, like Flexibility. And Sunny Ridge was a horse that just grinds away, has enough tactical speed and cruising speed to, if the pace does come up slow, which it could be ordinary here, he's the quality local colt that has that back class and experience that should find himself forwardly placed. But to me, when I'm looking at horses I'm interested in here, I think Conquest Big E, a horse with a big reputation. Now, he's a big colt, John.
Yeah.
He probably didn't like Gulfstream's tight surface and having to close ground there. To me, he strikes me as a colt that's going to get better with experience, particularly at a track like Aqueduct. I think you'll see a better performance from him. We may learn more about Conquest Big E now getting around 2 turns at a bigger racetrack. And a horse like Rally Cry, an up-and-coming colt. You know, there's 3 Uncle Mo's in the race. Todd Pletcher has a colt named Rally Cry in here, who has a big reputation down in South Florida. You can see they bet him every time he's run. I've heard a lot of buzz out of that barn. They really like this colt, and they think when he gets around 2 turns, he has a big future in front of him. So to me, if there's an outside horse away from Shagaf that you need to look for, it's Rally Cry. And I see them both getting similar trips in here. You know, both stalking that pace, or maybe even mid-pack if there were a strong pace in here. I could see the one horse having a break from the rail, maybe setting the pace, but it doesn't look like much speed in the race. I'm interested to see how Shagaf handles his first test around 2 turns. I want to see if Conquest Big E can bounce back on a fair track, and I want to see if Rally Cry can live up to his reputation, prove to be a horse that can be reckoned with on the Derby Trail.
All right, well, thank you, Joel, and thank you guys for watching. Make sure you come back next week. We'll see if the Gotham can shake up the TCI Top 10.